Getting a quality compiler for COBOL shouldn't be restrictive. Break free of proprietary policy and regain power to prepare for the future. Before I turn the presentation over to our presenter, Tim O'Brien, we thought it would be interesting to kick off today's webinar with a poll question so we can get an idea of where you are running your COBOL applications. On your screen, you should now see this poll question pop up. Where are you running your COBOL applications? Distributed environment, mainframe, or both? We ask that you please take a quick second to answer this poll. We greatly appreciate your participation, and I will give you a minute or two to make your selection while I'll tell you more about today's presentation. This Fujitsu NetCOBOL webinar is sponsored by GT Software. At this time, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping notes with you. Please note that all attendees are on mute. If at any time you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please use the chat panel located at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Send me a message so I can quickly resolve any troubles you may be experiencing. Also, you can use the same chat panel to send in any questions you have during today's presentation. To make sure we get through the entire presentation in our allotted time, we will hold all questions until the end. I'd like to thank everyone who took our first poll. At this time, I'm going to launch another quick poll. So you should see that on your screen right now. What COBOL compiler do you have? With 5 choices. And this poll will help us learn more about our audience today. And this will help Tim better shape today's presentation to better serve you in your time that you're spending with us. While you take a few moments to answer this question, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about today's presenter. Tim O'Brien is the Manager of Enterprise Solutions here at GT Software. He has been involved with technology for over 30 years, beginning his career in the U.S. Air Force, working with legacy mainframe applications. While at Fujitsu Software, Tim served as a Senior Systems Engineer and Subject Matter Expert, working with the Fujitsu COBOL compiler, and was involved in the testing of the NetCOBOL for .NET compiler. While with Microsoft, Tim was a key member of the Enterprise Platform Modernization team. Today, Tim serves as the Principal Technical Liaison for the GT Software Fujitsu Partner Relationship. I'd like to thank everyone that participated in our second poll. We will revisit the results of these polls later on in the presentation, but at this time, I'd now like to turn things over to today's presenter, Tim O'Brien. Tim?
Thank you, Brandy. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tim O'Brien, and I'm delighted to be with you today. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce GT Software to those of you who are unfamiliar with our company. GT Software was founded in 1982, and we're committed to providing world-class, innovative solutions to governments and industry alike through a worldwide sales and support network. We're laser-focused on the future, but we also recognize the benefits of tried and true technologies. Our product portfolio is comprised of products and services that support legacy platforms and newer open systems or distributed technologies. Many of our products allow us to bridge the gap between these types of technologies and allow customers to leverage new technologies to migrate application and data workload from the mainframe or leverage application and data workload on the mainframe. Many of our products are designed to bridge the gap. Again, we're focused on development of thoughtful and innovative technologies from GT Software. GT Software is the sole distributor for Fujitsu's NetCOBOL series of products. Some of the most important considerations to focus on when selecting a COBOL compiler are cost, agility, and quality. In our last 2 webinars, we covered cost and agility. Today, we're going to focus and discuss application quality and the selection of a COBOL compiler, and how that selection can have a direct impact on the quality of an application. We'll also discuss a number of other quality issues associated with COBOL application development. Our topics today are going to be COBOL today, application quality, technology tool selection, technology vendor selection, NetCOBOL in action, I've got a case study for you, and then refocus your COBOL compiler for quality. COBOL is one of the oldest programming languages and has had an impressive history. Created in 1959, its name is an acronym for Common Business-Oriented Language. The COBOL specification was created by a committee of researchers from private industry, universities, and government. Now, as you can see by these statistics, COBOL has evolved into and remains relevant and impactful in the marketplace. Now we have our final survey of the day. Brandy?
Great, thank you, Tim. On your screen shortly, you should be seeing our third poll of the day, asking you to select the description or descriptions that best match your experience with your COBOL compiler. I'll give you a couple of seconds to answer this question while we chat a little bit about what we learned in poll question number 1 and number 2. Tim, believe it or not, most of our audience is actually running their COBOL applications in a distributed environment, while the rest are running it on mainframe. That was a 60% to 40% split. And then in regards to what COBOL compilers our audience has, the majority of our audience is using the RM COBOL compiler. All right, I see a lot of answers coming in for our current poll question. I'll give you another few seconds to finish that up. Okay, that looks great, and I'm going to share the results of this on your screen. You'll see that the majority of our audience here is actually experiencing the high cost of runtime fees, with our second place winner being forced upgrades. So Tim, what do you think of those results? That definitely tells a story about today's audience.
It sure does tell a story. Quite an interesting mix of attendees. So that looks pretty good to me. So what do you say we go ahead and go on with our presentation?
I think that would be great. Back to you, Tim.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Brandy. So our question for today, what is quality? Well, frankly, most would agree that quality is kind of a perceptual, conditional, and somewhat subjective attribute, and may be understood differently by many, many different people. But in the end, my experience is that it's about the customer, whether internal or external to an organization, that ultimately depends or determines if the quality of a given software product is appropriate. Over the years, much has been written, studied, and pontificated on with regard to quality. Quality as defined in the ISO 9001 norm is what an organization defines internally to satisfy its customers' needs. Most people generally agree that quality is really a measure of excellence or a state of being free from defects, deficiencies, and significant variations. High levels of quality are brought about by strict and consistent commitment to certain standards that achieve uniformity of a product in order to satisfy specific customer or user requirements. But that's really not all that it is. It's not just freedom from defects that determine quality. There are really several measurement criteria that are typically employed in this sort of discussion. Some consider business objectives, business usage. Some may consider profitability or ease of use or ease of maintainability. And there are still more permutations to the quality discussion. So let's break out some of the attributes just a bit. The source code and software architecture attributes for efficiency are the elements that really ensure high performance once the application is in production or in runtime mode. Efficiency is especially important for applications in high-speed execution environments such as transactional processing, where performance and scalability are absolutely paramount. An analysis of source code efficiency and scalability provides a very clear picture of the latent business risks and harm that could be caused to customer satisfaction due to response time degradation. Now, reliability measures the level of risk and likelihood of potential application failure. It also measures the defects injected due to modifications made to software. Now, the goal for checking and monitoring reliability is to reduce and prevent application downtime, application outages, and any errors that really directly affect users. Up next is security. Now, security analysis is really important. Security analysis measures the likelihood of potential security breaches due to poor coding practices and architecture. This quantifies the risk of encountering critical vulnerabilities that could damage the business. Remember, the goal here is to always make sure that there is a minimal attack surface open for malicious exploit. The next one here is maintainability. Maintainability includes the notion of adaptability, portability, and transferability. Measuring and monitoring maintainability is a must for applications where change is driven by tight time-to-market schedules and where it's important for IT to remain very, very responsive to business-driven changes. I believe it's also essential to keep maintenance costs under control here. Okay? And finally, we come to size. Now, in the old days, machine architecture constraints really drove this particular attribute. With limited memory, restricted processing, and restricted processing power compared to current generation technology and expensive DASD, organizations were really motivated to make sure that what they developed would actually run in the sometimes constrained environment that they had. The meaning of size these days is much different. Machine and environmental issues are less of a concern because technology has become more advanced. So while not a quality attribute per se, the sizing of source code is a software characteristic that really impacts maintainability. Now, quality software is greatly dependent upon many, many factors, from best practices, product specifications, and requirements, right down to critical choices in supporting technology. Best practices, policies, and procedures are fundamental to software quality and essential in the development of applications with technology that is reliable, stable, and predictable. Omission or failure in any one of these areas will potentially result in low quality, missed deadlines, and ultimately higher costs to the organization in delivering product to customers. Now, there's another aspect that I kind of want to touch on here. I am a proponent of application portfolio management, or APM. APM replicates financial portfolio management to justify and measure the financial benefits of each application in comparison to the cost of the application's maintenance and operation. It's a valid approach that emerged in IT organizations since right around the mid-1990s, just about at the height of the Y2K situation. So the next thing I want to talk a little bit about is in determining an application's value. Determining an application's value can be somewhat problematic. Now, one example is that there's often a lot of missing documentation that's necessary to understand application attributes, program logic, and interfaces. And this is more common than most of us would care to admit. We all like to think that we're great at documenting our code and keeping code hygiene up, but typically that's not what happens. So in that particular instance, code analysis is really absolutely essential. So to drive the level of quality of code in your application, or drive the level of quality in your applications, you really need to understand your code. You need to have it documented and, of course, measure the attributes of your code. There are many tools in the marketplace that inventory, document, and measure basic metrics of your code. There are also a number of approaches to measuring code complexity. Now, I personally have found that the Halstead metrics provide a reasonably good perspective on the quality of and complexity of COBOL source that I've worked on over the years. It's essential to understand your code, the interfaces, and the data before you can effectively maintain or migrate your application to another platform. So the takeaway from this is really pretty simple and straightforward. Analyze your code. You really may be surprised at what it is that you find. Now, let's take a look at an example of an industry standard metrics approach. What we see here are complexity indicators and metrics calculations that are typically used in the Halstead measurement. Halstead measurements were developed by the late Maurice Halstead to determine the effort required to maintain a program. This measurement approach is a well-regarded means of assessing a program module's complexity directly from the source code, with emphasis on computational complexity. Now, the idea here is to determine a quantitative measurement of complexity directly from the operators and operands in a source code module. Now, over the years, I've found this measurement approach to be quite effective in understanding complexity of various systems that I've found myself working on. I've also found it helpful to use tools that generate graphic representations of program flow, module call relationships, file dependencies, and data flow diagrams in order to round out your understanding of a given application. Now, again, there are a number of analyzer programs or applications in the marketplace right now, and there are also a number of assessment and measurement approaches that have evolved over the years. I've worked with a bunch of them. The point is, it's essential to have a solid understanding of your application in order to assess impacts of changes in maintenance activities or assess level of effort in a migration project. Other considerations in building quality into your systems is consideration of the underlying support technology. Now, this particular point covers details like what operating environment the application runs in, file database choices, and finally, compiler choices. When it comes to compiler choices, I would proffer that the COBOL compiler technologies with proprietary language extensions implemented by some of the vendors that are out there that are not in accordance with the COBOL standard really should be assiduously avoided. These non-standard features create what we call vendor lock-in and contribute to the high costs of acquisition, maintenance, and support owing to the non-standard dialects that they employ. The issue affects developer productivity too. Now, there's one interesting phenomenon that we've seen over a period of time. Is some of the COBOL vendors have relaxed the standard rules for COBOL, thus allowing COBOL developers to write code that's not necessarily in accordance with the standard. In other words, we're seeing some sloppy code out there. Now, there's some COBOL lore that says that there's a COBOL compiler out there that is so relaxed that you could potentially write a letter home to your mother and actually get it to compile. So, again, that's pretty important for all of us to understand that it's important to have a very, very standards-focused COBOL. Many of us know the old saying that if all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. It's important to consider the technology tools to create and maintain your application. Again, standards compliance is absolutely essential. Another consideration is whether or not the tool will be able to evolve with your application as the operating environment evolves. As technology moves on, you need to make sure that the underlying tools and supporting technologies are capable of evolving so that your line of business applications can operate efficiently in the new environments. Now, your COBOL is core fundamental technology. A standards-compliant COBOL is not just a nice-to-have thing. It's an essential, fundamental component to a quality product and essential to building a quality line of business program. When you look at all of the issues associated with quality, it's important to also consider whether or not you're working with the right vendor. GT Software, Fujitsu, and our system integrator partners worldwide have combined to provide complete solutions that are widely regarded as best of breed. One more very important point. GT Software, Fujitsu, and our partners are focused on the customer experience. We care about our customer and our customer's customer. Fujitsu NetCOBOL is available for native Windows, Windows with .NET, and of course for Linux. All of these versions of the Fujitsu NetCOBOL compiler are available in x86 and x64 editions. Again, GT Software is the exclusive distributor for NetCOBOL outside of Japan. Now let's take a quick look at Fujitsu NetCOBOL in action and see how this compiler technology can have an effect on quality. Our case study today is a county court. This particular customer served approximately 514,000 residents and interacted with law enforcement agencies of the local, state, and federal government. As a division of the state trial court system, they managed cases for defendants who were on trial, and they really needed a system that would be absolutely reliable and stable at a very, very reasonable cost. They had a very old case management system in place that was really not working well for them, and they did try a legacy migration project converting COBOL to Java. But what they found is that the solution that they had converted to didn't scale well, and it had significant performance problems. This particular situation is a prime example of a situation where the choice of underlying technology was not up to the challenge of migration. In this instance, the underlying technology used resulted in such a low quality result that the project ended up failing. After that migration failure, they tried a different approach. They converted their existing COBOL system to NetCOBOL and NeoCase. With this solution, they were successful because of the business rules and business processes that were embodied in their old COBOL program were able to be preserved. The customer ended up having an annual savings of $720,000 per year, and it eliminated $60,000 in monthly chargebacks for mainframe time by migrating to the Windows platform. Their performance improved too. Their query times were cut in half, and their weekly system management for the system was reduced significantly. Now, we have a number of options for migrating legacy COBOL from the mainframe or from other COBOL dialects that are deployed on open system platforms. We have trusted partners like Fujitsu, Expersolve, and Flexus, who along with GT Software have a complete solution and practical tools-based approaches to migration. We invite you to contact us and discuss your challenges with us and our partners. Cost, business agility, and application quality is greatly affected by your technology choices. COBOL itself is a tried and true technology, and whether we're talking about migration from a mainframe or another vendor's COBOL, we can help you save money. Just one thing that I want to point out here, one of the principal differences between Fujitsu's NetCOBOL in all of its variants is that we do not charge for runtime license fees. If you're interested in learning more about NetCOBOL, please reach out to us at 800-765-4348 or visit us on the web at www.netcobol.com. You can also follow us on social media. Now, I'm available to go ahead and take a few questions. Randy, do we have any questions?
In fact, we do, Tim. I just thank you so much for your presentation. I just want to remind everyone that if you do have a question for Tim that you haven't already sent in to us, feel free to use the chat panel located at the bottom right-hand side of your screen, and we'll make sure that Tim gets an answer for you. Tim, we have had a couple people request access to your copies of your slides and recordings of today's webcast. I just wanted to let everyone know that we will send you a follow-up email next week that will include the copies of the slides and recorded webcasts. And as Tim mentioned earlier, today's webcast was actually part of a three-part series on Refocus Your COBOL. The first webinar was on cost, the second focused on agility. We will also include access to those recordings in that follow-up email as well. But you can always find those on gtsoftware.com as well. Okay, Tim, are you ready for your first question?
I am.
Okay. All right, you mentioned the importance of analyzing your code. What effect, if any, do these tools have in identifying defects throughout an application's life cycle? Is this analysis you are talking about a one-time shot?
That's a good question. I'm a very, very strong proponent of code analysis. I believe that using tools to analyze code and to assess impacts is really very important to the folks who have to maintain these applications. So no, it's really not a one-time shot. Just as metrics have always been used to help guide managers with decisions about organizations or how to manage organizations, developers should also likewise use metrics to help them with understanding their applications and to be able to use that information to make critical decisions about how applications are managed throughout the software development lifecycle. So I believe there's definitely a place for analytical tools in a dev organization to be utilized throughout the entire SDLC for an application.
Okay, great. Thank you. Your next question has to do with the Halstead analysis. Does this analysis work with multiple COBOL dialects and other software languages?
Yes, it does. COBOL is pretty straightforward in that particular regard. Halstead has been used for a very long time for COBOL. As a matter of fact, you can find references to the usage of Halstead even on the IBM site. So it's very, very well-established approach. There are also analysis tools for other languages like Java, where the Halstead measurement approach has been used pretty effectively. So the Halstead approach seems to be pretty universal.
Okay, great. Does anybody else have any other questions? Please use the chat feature. We still have some time. So if you have any burning questions, just let us know. While we wait and see if we have any more, I just want to remind everyone that the contact information for us is up on the screen. So if you have any questions that come to you after the webcast, do feel free to contact us, and we're more than happy to tell you more about NetCOBOL. Well, Tim, I'm not seeing any other questions come in, so I just want to thank everyone for joining us today, and I want to thank you for a great presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Brandy. And on behalf of GT Software, Fujitsu, and all of our trusted partners, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your time today. Thank you again, and have a great day.
Goodbye.